a major week for the Patriots offseason as they look to get things on the right track here. So we have a ton to go over this morning, Cerrone. We'll get into some free agency stuff as well. But obviously it's going to be a draft-heavy show if people want to join us. 617-779-0985. But after a couple months of if this, if that, what if this, what if that, we're not going to get all the answers this week. But we're going to get some big questions, hopefully, cleared up by the time we're back on the air next week. There is one that we won't have. I don't think we'll have. It's going to be really close by the time we're on the air next week. We'll get to that in a little bit, but hopefully we get some big answers this week.
Yeah, it should be pretty cool. You're going down, you're going to have the stopwatch around your neck, man. You down there on the sidelines.
Stopwatch, binoculars. Is the one of Bill eating the popcorn with the binoculars. That's from the Combine, right?
Yeah, I think so.
If I remember correctly. So that's going to be me this week.
Is that the one with the orange juice as well?
No, that I think was the owners' meetings.
Okay.
But I'll find some orange juice for sure.
Hey, look, man, enjoy yourself and, give us that insight that we know you bring to all of us, man. So, have fun down there, and hey, man, you're gonna be a busy dude the next few days.
I'm expecting. I would say Wednesday in particular. Keep an eye out on the Sports Hub YouTube page. Have some things lined up. We'll have content all week, but just kind of as I start to put the schedule together, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Hub YouTube page. I think Wednesday there's going to be some stuff that there'll be stuff people like every day, but Wednesday I know I have some good things coming. Before we get to the actual combine, the on-field drills, and all of that, though, I actually wanted to open the show the way that we're going to open the week. So player media availability doesn't begin until Wednesday. Workouts don't begin until Thursday. Tuesday, the first event, is Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is going to speak to reporters Tuesday morning. It will be the first time we've heard from him since his introductory press conference. And then, and this one might be more interesting to some people, Elliot Wolf is going to speak Wednesday afternoon. It's either 1 o'clock or 1:30. Elliot Wolf is going to speak Wednesday afternoon for the first time since training camp last year. So we haven't heard from him since really the whole season and Gerard Mayo getting fired and the entire staff getting cleaned out.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's been a while. And he's the one speaking as the GM representative. Obviously, the Patriots don't have a general manager. It will be him, not Ryan Cowden. I wouldn't read too much into that in terms of who has the control, especially you look at some of the roster moves this week. Sione Takitaki getting released. That is an Elliot Wolf guy. That is somebody Elliot Wolf helped draft in Cleveland when he was the assistant GM there. Is not really a fit for the Mike Vrabel defense. So I'm not reading into Elliot Wolf speaking as him still having full control or anything, but he'll talk for the first time in a while. Vrabel will talk for the first time, and it'll be a month and a half, a little under 2 months. And it's generally pretty wide open. These guys aren't just getting asked about the combine. They'll be asked all sorts of questions that have been building since the last time they spoke. Is there anything in particular you'd like to hear or questions you're hoping to get answered from? We'll start with Mike Vrabel. That's the easier one. Anything particular you're hoping to hear from Mike Vrabel when he speaks this week?
Not so much Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think he's going to, he's going to give the basic answers. When we're trying to get better, we're trying to improve all over the field. I want to say he's going to be fine. I don't expect any bombshell type stuff from Mike Vrabel or any type crazy questions toward Vrabel. I mean, outside of, what are you looking for? What kind of team you trying to build? And he's going to say something like, we're trying to be physical and aggressive, that type of stuff. I'm not so much worried about him. My main focus is Wolf. I think they'll start with last year. What happened last year? Is there things you could have done different last year? Is there the situation with Gerard Mayo? Do you think you had a good enough roster to compete? Things like that. I think he's going to get drilled more so about what went wrong last year and how to avoid those things going into this season. So I'm way more curious to hear what Elliot Wolf has to say. And to your point, I did not realize he hadn't spoken to the media in that long. That's pretty wild to me.
I will say on Vrabel, and I agree with you, Wolf is he stands out more. And maybe this is more of a spring practices question. I am interested for Vrabel if it comes up who's going to call the defensive plays.
Yeah.
And it's possible they haven't totally settled that yet. They don't really need to at this point, but We know Josh McDaniels is going to call the offense, right? Is Vrabel going to call the defense? Is Terrell Williams going to call the defense? I'd be interested to hear that. Yeah, and I think you hit on it really with Elliott Wolf is like what, and this is not necessarily a specific question in and of itself, but just kind of the big picture. What can they learn from last year and apply it forward? And we don't know, like the setup's different than last year, right? Elliott Wolf had final say last year. It doesn't seem like he's going to have it this year. So how much is there? Is it learning from last year versus just taking what Vrabel and Cowden and some of these new staffers give him, right? You kind of have the dichotomy there, but it's going to be interesting to hear him talk about, he'll get asked about the wide receivers. What does he say about the wide receivers? And is there any mention, even indirectly, of Polk and Baker and maybe issues they had with those guys and things they're looking to avoid or things they're looking to target or things like that? What does he have to say about the offensive line? Last time he talked, we got that infamous quote. I don't remember it exactly off the top of my head, but something along the lines of like, yeah, we like what we have on the offensive line, right? Yeah. We feel like we have the tools in place, which obviously they very much didn't. So does he talk about being more aggressive with the offensive line, needing to change things more? That one's going to be a lot more telling. So, again, that's Wednesday afternoon. We'll hear from Vrabel first. But that is, like, we'll get into the Will Campbell and Travis Hunter and that of it all in the next segment. That Elliott Wolf press conference, even if he doesn't have final say anymore, just to get an idea into where they're at in their approach to this thing. Because as we've talked about time and time again on the show, there's so many different directions they can go in this offseason. That Elliott Wolf press conference to me is probably I don't know that it's the biggest, but it's right up there with the bigger stories we'll get out of Indy this week from a Patriots point of view.
I mean, it's what's your direction? Like, are you going to be aggressive not only in free agency, which comes first for the draft? Are you going to be how are you going to approach free agency? It seems like last year, I wouldn't say you kind of, you on your heels a little bit, to kind of unsure about yourself. Are you going to be aggressive in free agency? How are you going to approach this? Who's all involved in decision making? Is the crafts involved? Do they want a certain thing? I think stuff like you said, we're going to get into Travis Hunter a little bit later. Things like, okay, what he does on the field, is it his impact off the field just as important? I'm talking making money, jersey sales. Like it's right. What kind of players are you looking for? You looking for faces of your franchise? Like, how are you going to try and build this team? And are you trying to build it to, championship level, competitive level early, or is this a slow burn here? Like, what's your approach to free agency and the draft? And that's the one thing I'd want to know from him. What kind are you going to be aggressive? Like, and like you mentioned a minute ago, who has, I would say, final say, but how much impact does everybody have? How much? Even McDaniels on the offensive side, how much say does he have, and what kind of guys they pick and bring in? So I'm not saying he's going to answer all those things, but those are the things I would like to know as a fan of this team.
I will give you one more for Patriots fans to keep an eye on. And again, before the players talk. So the players begin talking on Wednesday. GMs and coaches will talk Tuesday, and I believe there's a couple. Well, I know that there's a couple on Wednesday because Elliott Wolf is talking on Wednesday. But Tuesday I'm trying to find it on the schedule here, 3:30, Duke Tobin, the director of player personnel for the Cincinnati Bengals, will talk. You're going to want to have one eye on that one if you're a Patriots fan, because we'll get to T. Higgins later on in the show, but what's going on with T. Higgins? And we can honestly start having this conversation too. If it is Higgins and Chase going back, which I still think is going to happen, there's a third guy there that needs to be signed this offseason as well, and that's Trey Hendrickson, their star pass rusher. He's a pre-agent. He's not a free agent. He's going into the last year of his deal. He'll be 31 years old next season, so a little bit older, but I will say some of these pass rushers are starting to play like at a high level into their mid-30s. You look at what Von Miller's done. You look at what Khalil Mack has done. He's, 35?
Yeah.
And he's probably going to get a decent contract. Some of these guys are playing later on, so maybe you're not as worried about the age at that position. Hendrickson, I don't believe, has a significant injury history. Do they keep him on a contract year, and they're just like, we're trying to win a Super Bowl. If we lose him, we lose him, maybe. But, it's an $18 million cap hit. I think they can free up 16 of that. I'm looking at overthecap.com right now. To get Higgins and Chase paid, does he become available? Patriots could sure use a pass rusher. He's not T. Higgins. He's not going to help you on offense, but Trey Hendrickson would be a great addition for the Patriots. So it will be interesting to hear what the Bengals have to say as well, because there's going to be a lot of pressing questions. The Patriots stuff, it's going to be more vague. It's going to be more big picture, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure Wolf will be asked about, what does he think of arm length, which is obviously about Will Campbell, and maybe about Travis Hunter, which position, blah, 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 blah. It's not going to be necessarily as pointed as maybe that Bengals one will be. What is the plan for T. Higgins? Do you think you can get him long term? Will Hendrickson be back? Will he play on an expiring contract, right? Those answers might help us get an idea if any of those guys are attainable for the Patriots.
Is there any other team that's in that kind of situation like the Bengals, where they have a bunch of top end guys that they have to pay, that could be, cap casualties, let go, trade it, whatever? Is there any other team that you could look at where you can pick players from that are on that level, like Cincinnati, or is it just mainly the Bengals at this point?
Now that you have me thinking, I will say 1:00 on Tuesday, John Schneider. What's the deal with DK Metcalf?
Yeah.
Right. So this is the week where, at the podium, and those will be, podium answers. Yeah. We really like DK. He's done a lot for this organization. We write all that. But then you get the reports, they'll usually come out the week after about what was being said behind the scenes about some of these guys, and we'll get a real idea of who might actually be available for the Patriots. So, again, the Combine is not all prospects. There's other things that are relevant as well. And if you missed kind of why we were talking about this, it's Elliot Wolf and Mike Vrabel will speak. We haven't heard from Vrabel in about a month and a half. We haven't heard from Wolf since last summer. So we'll get to hear from both of them this week at the Combine. But, of course, everybody wants to talk prospects. That's what's fun. Like the draft, who are the Patriots going to take, who's going to be there. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of the Combine, right? Let's get to some of these players, and we'll do that next on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff is on the way on the Sports Hub.
is damaged by a property disaster, call Blue Sky First. With locations across New England, they'll take care of everything from beginning to end. Visit goblusky.com. Blue Sky Restoration, restoring your property and your life for a brighter tomorrow. And that starts at the NFL Combine this week. A lot to watch for Patriots fans. I put out my preview I'll have my preview up, tomorrow on 98.5thesportshub.com. Storylines to look for over the course of the week. We already got to one off the top that Elliot Wolf and Mike Vrabel are speaking. What else are you looking for this week, Cerrone? Obviously, there's some specifics. Will Campbell, Travis Hunter, I want to get to them. Do those stand out for you? Is there anything else in particular, any players, any positions that you'll be keeping a closer eye on?
I want to see the guys that are behind the big names. I want to see, is there the reasons why Calvin Banks fell? I want to see what he does. If he's, if his measurables and everything else line up and he, if his stock goes back up to the way it was, mid-season, if he's back in the running as one of the best left tackles in the country. I mean, it's one of the best already, but if he's up there, move back up with Will Campbell. We talk a lot about how you start off, there's two quarterbacks that everybody wants, and then it kind of drops off. But the closer you get to the draft day, the more you hear quarterbacks' names called and they get hyped up, whatever. I think we can say the same. I want to see if that's going to be the same for other positions. Is there going to be some receivers that pop up? It's all about right now. Free agency is T. Higgins. In the draft is Ted. It's how you want to use
Travis Hunter.
Excuse me.
Yep.
And then it kind of, you don't really hear too many other names. I want to see, like, you bring up things like the 40 and all the other measurables, well, guys' stock just rises. I want to see if other guys move up the board to where it can shake up this draft. But I'm really focused on left tackle in Banks. I thought he was going to be the man early on, but his name kind of fell off a lot. I think he's still the number 2 left tackle right now, but I think he's slipped outside of the top 10 in most people's mock drafts. But I'm paying attention to him and the defensive tackles outside of Mason Graham. You hear about the other edge rushers, but you don't hear too much about the interior guys. And I want to see if there's any other guys that pop up that make people say, oh, wait a minute now. This guy, I know I know the film says one thing, but what does the athletic ability say? If we get some guys 300 pounds out there running, 4.740s and, benching 30 reps, it's like, wait a minute. There's always a guy that just shoots up the board in a lot of these positions. So I'm waiting to see other guys kind of rise to the top that you really aren't really talking about, or you don't see in a lot of people's mock drafts, especially in the top 10, top 15.
I think when you talk about like sorting out different positions, that's what this event is big for.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody outside of injury stuff, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Like with the Senior Bowl, like nobody's draft stock it's not make or break at the Combine. You're not going from being a 5th round pick to a 1st round pick. You're not going from being a 1st round pick to a 5th round pick, right? That's not what this is. It's confirming priors into tiebreaker. So some of those positions that you mentioned, edge rusher to me is a big one because, again, when I say tiebreaker, I'm talking about players who are graded relatively similarly and maybe you don't know how you want to order them within that. So there's a group of, however you want to count it, like 10 to 15 edge rushers or defensive linemen in like the 15 to 50 range of this draft. Guys like Mike Green, Jack Sawyer, Donovan Ezeraku, Princely Umanmielen, Landon Jackson, Kyle Kennard, right? And how do you stack those guys up? And this can be a good way to kind of differentiate. At the tackle position is another one, especially when you get earlier on, late day 2, early day 3, Emory Jones, Anthony Belton, Ozzie Trapillo, that group. How are they going to be sorted? That's a big thing to watch this week, certainly. You talked about the wide receivers and their testing, and what I think will be big, all eyes are on the 40, which let me remind everybody again, the 40-yard dash, why do they run the 40? Because the average punt goes 40 yards, and when the Combine was created, it was to see if guys could cover a punt, and we put all this other meaning on it. There's going to be 2 guys this year, Isaiah Bond from Texas and Tez Johnson from Oregon, who are they're probably going to run the 2 fastest 40s of any receiver.
Yeah, track stars.
Right. Tez Johnson, some people think might push Xavier Worthy's record from last year. I want to remind people to be careful not to get caught up in that. And I obviously liked Worthy last year, but I liked him going in. And if you watched him run some of the other drills, and he didn't run a 3-cone or a shuttle, I wish he had, but like you watch the other drills, it's not just straight line speed. He had an ability to cut. He had an ability to change direction. He's quick. He's a good route runner, right? So a guy like Tez Johnson is going to blow us away with his 40. He's gonna run in the 4.2s. I would be shocked if he didn't. Does he get to 4.21? We'll see. It'll be interesting, but like he's gonna have the best 40 time of any receiver. Okay. How does he look in the gauntlet? Does he run any of the agility drills? How does he look running routes? Like, you can't just be fast, especially for a guy that's 5'8", 156 pounds. You can't just be fast. You have to be able to do other things. I don't want to pick on Tyquan Thornton, but this was kind of the thing with Tyquan Thornton. He ran that great 40, but the agility wasn't there. So that's something to watch as well. And again, when you're sorting guys out, if you're going to use the 40 for anything, because it's not that often NFL players run 40 yards uninterrupted. The usage of the 40, to me, they'll also, if you look, they'll give you the numbers, how fast it took to go each 10-yard increment.
Yep.
That 10-yard split, the first 10 yards, because it shows how explosive a guy is, how quick he can accelerate. Like, that's the number you want to see, not just for receivers, for like an offensive lineman, because it shows how powerful they are. So that's something to watch. You mentioned the quarterbacks. That's another good one. Can we get Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders to show that they're, if not both top 3 picks, which would be ideal, because then you get one of Hunter or Carter if you're the Patriots. But if they're not top 3 picks, all right, maybe the Raiders are willing to give up a haul to go to 4 to get whoever falls because they have a good combine. Or does another quarterback emerge?
Yep.
And maybe that's not in the top 3. Maybe it's not even a trade up to 4, but somebody that's going to push prospects down to 38, or maybe make somebody want to trade up to 38. That could be Jalen Milroe, who's going to have a great combine, I would think.
Yeah, he's crazy athletic.
Could be Will Howard off the momentum of the national championship. For some reason, we're talking about Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart, man, that's the one.
People came away from the Super Bowl, Senior Bowl, all hyped about him. That's this year's J.J. McCarthy for me.
That's it. He's the one.
I have no clue, but I guess we're talking about him. And the injury updates, like I mentioned before, right? I know a lot of Patriots fans are interested in Josh Simmons, who tore his patellar tendon in October. It was October, early November last year. It was October. That's the Cole Strange injury, which kept him off the field for a year. So where's he at? Another one, I haven't seen this guy talked about as much for the Patriots, but a good player to know on this front, Siobhan Revel, who you actually might be familiar with at ECU. The corner from ECU, had a transfer there in 2023, had a really good year, tore his ACL 3 weeks into this season. So because it was September, like he has a chance to be back as a rookie, but it's a torn ACL for a corner, right? Teams are going to want a closer look at where he's at. And then another North Carolina guy, Bryson Nesbitt, might also be in that conversation. He had a wrist injury that was kind of naggy this year and kept him out of some games. But where he's at, because he's definitely going to be a target for the Patriots, given his familiarity with Drake May.
And I think with when you have ACL injuries like that, I mean, the first thing you look at is when did it happen this season? Was it 3 weeks into the year? Could he?
Yes.
So, I mean, he's looking back. He can get back early enough, but I don't know if teams are going to be willing to risk that pick on somebody. I mean, I think he'll get picked up probably later on, but I don't know if teams are going to be willing to risk it. And then you find out, has setbacks or other things like that, unless they're really looking long term. Like we're going to get this kid, get him in house, and then we know we've got him, and then we'll get our doctors, our people around him, and get him back up to speed whenever. No rush. But I think it just depends on where teams are at. I mean, where their process is. So I can see a team that knows they're beginning a project snatch up some of these guys with these injuries. But these higher end teams, I think they're going to just bypass those guys and try and pick up people who are ready to play right now. And there's something you mentioned about, you a few minutes ago about Xavier.
Yeah, I'm
Worthy.
sorry. No, that was a long. I just wanted to get
no. That's fine. That's good. That's good. Xavier Worthy talked about his 40 time, and people getting caught up in that. And you talked about his shiftiness and things like that. That directly played into how he was used this season. If you go back and look, it was the reverses, it was the screen passes, it was the quick slants. it wasn't always go routes. I think Kansas City was toward the bottom in what air yardage or whatever, however they ranked that. They weren't really stretching the field over and over again with this guy. They were using him in a bunch of stuff underneath and using his explosive quickness. And I think that's the part people really need to pay attention to, is how these guys, if they do run these cone drills and stuff like that, that's what I want to see from these receivers, how fast they change direction. To me, that says how quickly you can get open, make passes, and go. Just having that straight 40 speed, it didn't really work out well for the Patriots. It didn't work out for a lot of these teams. I think Detroit and Dallas had years of taking the guys who were just fast, and it never really worked out for them. So that's a great point by you, by Xavier Worthy, and how he's used in that Kansas City offense.
All right, let's narrow it down. Let's get some specific players. Will Campbell, we'll talk about him next here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff coming up on the Sports Hub.
of that. The fact is, it matters. And for Will Campbell, when he stretches out that arm from shoulder to fingertip, he is hoping that it's going to show at least 33 inches for the arm length. And, we can have the debate about whether arm length, how much it matters and all of that. But the fact is, teams have thresholds for offensive tackles and arm length. Ideally, they want 34, 35-inch arms. But 33 is passable, where 32 3/4, maybe that's not going to work. So for Will Campbell, and I know teams want to keep Will Campbell at tackle. Will Campbell, I checked with 10 teams over the last few weeks. They all have Will Campbell on the board as a tackle. And so they'd like to keep him there. Will that change after the combine? We'll have to see. I mean, the tape says he can do it. In the last 30 games as an SEC left tackle, he gave up 2 sacks.
This week that's going to impact the Patriots offseason. Most of it we will be able to break down on the show next week. And the reason I say most is because the way the schedule plays out this year. So workouts are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mm-hmm. So there will still be a set of workouts to come when we're on the air next week.
Yep.
The final group working out, of course, is offensive linemen. You know what else happens on the day of the workouts?
The measurements.
The measurements. So you can pencil in. I've been making the joke all week.
10:05.
Right. March 2nd, mark your calendars, Patriots fans, for Will Campbell's arm length. At 10:02, we're going to get Will Campbell's arms. So we'll do the whole show next week, and we still won't have that answer, which is integral. I cannot wait. The last month of my life has been explaining to people, this 20-year-old kid, if his arms are this long versus if they're just half an inch longer, it changes everything. Please, I'll take 9 o'clock. Yeah, we can recap all the other positions through the first hour. I'll take 9 o'clock. Please get that measurement in. But Will Campbell's arms will be measured within a week, probably a week from just about right now. He'll be getting measured in at the combine. So for people who don't really understand how this works, the general consensus, you kind of heard it there, that was Dane Brugler of The Athletic. The general consensus is tackles should have at least 33-inch arms because you basically need that reach when, it's not like at guard where you essentially have help on both sides. And that doesn't mean you have designed help, but you can't really run around a guard because you're going to run into where the center is. You're going to run into where the tackle is, right? You obviously can't run around the center. He's in the middle. You can run around a tackle. So being able to have that long reach just gives you more ability to protect that edge and prevent you from getting run around. Mm-hmm. So the consensus is right now 33 inches. The projections, and this is just people eyeballing it, people who focus on this stuff much closer than I do, think Will Campbell's going to be right around 33. Mm-hmm. If he's above, it's going to be just above. If he's below, it's going to be just below. So most of the outcomes are obvious. And if he's below, that doesn't mean he can't play in the NFL. The guys that are below the threshold just move inside to guard. The example a lot of people bring up is Peter Skoronski, who did this a couple years ago with the Titans when Mike Vrabel was there. Now, Peter Skoronski had 32.5-inch arms. That's well short of the threshold. Half an inch is well short in this, when you're talking about these things, game of inches. Skoronski moved inside to guard. He's a good guard. He moved inside to guard. Joe Thuney's another one who played tackle in college. Arms are too short, moved inside to guard. You saw him kick back out to tackle this year with mixed results, and some of that was just because of the length. Mm-hmm. If Campbell comes in 32 3/4 or shorter, and they measure this in eighths, and you might see where I'm going. If he comes in 32 3/4 or shorter, he's a guard. He's a guard. We stopped talking about him at 4th overall. Alaric Jackson becomes, maybe, assuming Ronnie Stanley gets re-signed, Alaric Jackson becomes the most important player this offseason for the Patriots, all of that, right? Will Campbell's a guard. If he comes in 33 and above, 33 or above, 33 and an eighth, 33 and a quarter, whatever, he's a tackle. I don't want to hear, they're still on the shorter side. He was in the SEC. It's not like we have to project this length. I mean, you do have to project a certain amount to the NFL.
Yeah.
But he's going up against NFL pass rushers week in and week out in the SEC. And what was the clip there? He allowed like 2 sacks
in 30 games.
And it was
roughly 3 years of college football.
And I'm pretty sure it was his first career game and his last career game, if I remember correctly, that he allowed that sack. So, like, it'll translate. It'll translate. The chaos scenario is Will Campbell's arms measure in at 32 7/8, which is as under as you can be, or as close as you can be while still being under. Because I mentioned that 33-inch threshold. That's not like a long-standing thing. It was 33.5 for a while, and then Rashawn Slater in 2021, coming out of Northwestern, measured in at 33-inch arms. Some people thought he'd have to play guard. The Chargers were like, he's talented enough to kind of break the mold, put him at tackle, and obviously that's worked out. So if Campbell comes in at 32 7/8, now we get to spend the next 2 months debating, is he talented enough to reset the threshold again like Rashawn Slater did? And that's going to be – so I think that's what it's going to be, because of course it will be. Of course we won't be able to get a clear answer on this.
Yeah. It makes more sense for this to be a drawn-out process than to be blatantly obvious.
Right.
I think – here's my question is, will you have a GM who's willing to risk it all and say, nah, I'm not going to do it? I need a left tackle. Are you willing to be the GM known as the guy that passed up the Hall of Fame left tackle because of arm length? Like, are you willing? Is this guy that good to where you look at the tape and say, even though his arms are slightly short, he is throwing people out the club left and right? They can't get to quarterbacks. You know, do you have a situation where you have a quarterback on your team right now and you need a left tackle, and he's sitting there like, please take this kid. I need this guy protecting my blinds. I don't care what his arm length is. Are you willing to be that GM or that head coach that says no and allows this kid to slide, and he falls into a situation to where you're like that? Why didn't I take this kid? Like, is he that good talent-wise? 2 sacks in 30 games is ridiculous. Right. Do you just completely is he the guy you completely overlook this whole arm length situation and say he's dominant in the run game? No one gets around this kid. His footwork is so solid that, you know, even if guys try and go wide on him, he still finds a way to cut him off. Do you completely overlook it with this kid simply because of his other talents?
Well, that's going to be the question. And some of that, I don't think that there's going to be a blanket answer to that, right? So for me, you put Hall of Famer in there, that might be a bit much, but I don't need a guy, and people might roll their eyes at this, I don't need a certified Hall of Famer at 4th overall. I want a guy that is, especially in this draft where there's not a lot of talent, give me a guy that's going to be here for 10, 12 years, plug and play, set it and forget it starter at a premium position.
Yeah.
If Will Campbell can be a completely different play style, but like Nate Solder, nobody was talking about replacing Nate Solder.
Yeah.
Good, solid tackle. If he can be like Nate Solder plus, I would take him 4th. So to your point, you know, at 32 7/8, yeah, I think he can reset the number. I think he's that good. If he comes in at like 32 1/4, no, there's like going to be, he legitimately won't have the reach at that point to play the position. I don't think he can play to that level. And if he's drafted as a tackle. Now, as a guard, I think he can. But the Patriots shouldn't be taking a guard 4th overall. They shouldn't be taking a guard in the 1st round. So, to your point, like, I think there are, and to the Brugler clip as well, like, teams want him to be a tackle. They look at him and see tackle. But I think that's only going to go to a certain number, and it's basically how, and every team may have a different number. Okay, we see him as a tackle as long as he comes in 33 and above. Another team might look at it and say, we'll draft him as a tackle at 32 7/8. Is there a team willing to say, we'll draft him as a tackle at 32 and 3/4?
Yeah.
Right? And that's going to be a team-to-team thing, but that's what probably going into this week they are asking themselves. So when they get the measurement, they can put the full evaluation together. They're probably discussing those different outcomes now. It does help that there have kind of been, and not quite that short, but a run of tackles with shorter arms that have had success in recent years. I'll give you one. He's a right tackle, so it's not apples to apples, but he's built physically very similarly. Much more athletic than Campbell, but built very physically similarly, and that's Penei Sewell, who came in at 33 1/4. So teams are willing to jump around that number. They're absolutely willing to jump around that number. You just have to have the talent for it. And that's basically what everybody's going to have to ask themselves if Campbell comes in on the shorter side are they willing to give him a chance at whatever number he comes in at?
No. Okay, real quick. This quick question. In all the games he's played, is there a situation that happened to where his arm length was a problem to where this became an issue for him? Like, was it a particular game against a particular opponent where it was like, see that arm length thing right there, that might hurt him on the next level? Was there ever a situation to where it looked like he was being overwhelmed to where these questions came up for him? Or is it just people eyeballing and saying, I think his arms are short? You know what I'm saying? Like, is he? There's what really got this conversation going with him.
There's a couple, like there's no perfect prospect, right? You can find clips of Travis Hunter running some routes that aren't as crisp as others. There's plays where Abdul Carter gets stonewalled on a rush. Like, I'm not going to say that's not there, but it's not there to a concerning amount. Honestly, one thing I really like about Will Campbell is the few losses that he did have, and everybody points to the South Carolina game where Kyle Kennard gets him really good on like the second snap. He learned and he adjusted, and he didn't get beat the same way twice. Mm-hmm. Like, he's really good at making adjustments when he does get beat to prevent it from happening again, which you want to see. He's a quick learner. There will be people who tell you there are more examples of him getting, driven back into the quarterback. A lot of the times, not every time, but a lot of the time when I see people posting those clips, it's not so much Campbell getting driven back into the quarterback as much as it is Garrett Nussmeier having no pocket presence and running into Campbell. It was frustrating how much that happened. And by the way, that's also really true for a lot of the tackles in this draft. College quarterback pocket presence is not good. You watch Kelvin Banks, you see a lot of that with Quinn Ewers too. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say like it's never a factor. There's times it has been, and it will be at times in the NFL. But I think part of what I like about him, he does a really good job of, okay, this guy beat me this way. Let me make sure I do this so he can't beat me with that move again. In the chess match that is pass rushers against linemen, and, you show a move, okay, here's my counter, here's another move, here's a counter, that, back and forth. He's really good in that back and forth, I think, of staying a step ahead for most of the game.
Yeah, I was just wondering why this became a conversation with him, but I understand the importance of it and how they measure it out. And I know we're out of time, but I was going to ask, has he ever seen situations where guys have overly long arms and it didn't really pan out to success on the flip side? But we'll get into that another time.
Yeah, I'll just say Dylan Stewart, who's a true freshman at South Carolina, who's unbelievable. Obviously not in the draft, but he has, I don't know what his arms measure in because he hasn't been measured, but he looks like he's on the longer side. It was another one of those things where, like, he got Campbell really good once in that game, and then Campbell kind of figured him out from there.
Yeah.
So it happens. It's not that it doesn't happen. It happens, but he adjusts well when it happens, which I think is a good trait. Is a good trait to have in a player. All right, from the linemen to the receivers, I want to get into Travis Hunter. But first, I want to talk about the receivers as a whole. So we'll do that quickly. Then Travis Hunter, long commercial-free segment coming up on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
Stay tuned for more Sunday Kickoff on the Sports Hub.
This is Sean Grande, voice of the Celtics. Tune in today at 12:30 for
2. Here it goes. Oh!
Keep going. He might just keep running right out of the stadium.
The roar of the crowd.
That is awesome.
J.J. McCarthy and Roman Wilson greet him. A 4-2-2 unofficial. John Ross, wherever you are.
That was Xavier Worthy setting the NFL Combine 40-yard dash record last year at 4.2140. It's Alex Barth and Cerrone Battle on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. Kyle Fabrizio behind the glass with us here today, this morning. Full squad as we get ready for the NFL Combine. And I just, quick little pause here to do a little story time on the 40-yard dash. I kind of talked about this earlier, but I feel like it's a good reminder for people this time of year. How do we look at the 40? This is the marquee event of the Combine. This is the one everybody talks about, especially now that they don't do the bench press with the rest of the workouts for whatever reason. I think the players just wanted it separated. So the 40 is the one that gets all the attention, right? And you heard Xavier Worthy's 4.21 there. And I think Xavier Worthy's a good player, and he's been a good player. I'm going to give you some of the other top 40s here, Cerrone. So Xavier Worthy had the record at 4.21. He broke the record of John Ross at 4.22, who broke the record of Kaylon Barnes at 4.23. 4.24, you have Rondell Menendez and Chris Johnson. Yes, that Chris Johnson. 4.26, Jerome Mathis, Dree Archer, Tariq Woolen, DJ Turner. 4.27, Henry Ruggs, Stanford Route, Marquise Goodwin. Not a lot of NFL superstars on that list. Chris Johnson, obviously, tremendous player. Tremendous player. Tariq Woolen is carving out a nice career for himself in Seattle. It's early. He's only been in the league a couple years. Henry Ruggs had his situation, and Marquise Goodwin was, he hung around. I don't think he ever had 1,000-yard receivers in the NFL. He had 900 one year, and never had more than 400 in a year after that. So you don't just want to look at raw 40 time and make assumptions about prospects, and it happens. But and that's not to say if a guy runs a fast 40, he's bad. I've seen that one too. I remember that last year with Xavier Worthy. Oh, he ran a 4.21. He must not be good because, they look at the names of John Ross and Jerome Mathis and say, well, I guess he's one of those guys. It's all about, looking at the player in context. Again, this event is about confirming priors. Did you know a player was fast or not? Tyquan Thornton, I hate to keep picking on Tyquan. People were kind of surprised when he ran that 40. People knew he was fast, but he wasn't seen as that level of fast. Mm-hmm. So there's other ways. You look at the agility. You also look at, on the flip side of it, they do like the player tracking when guys are running routes and going through the gauntlet.
Yeah.
This is where the Rams have been really good. Puka Nacua he had like a 4.5 something 40. He did not run good 40, but he was the second or third fastest timed in terms of the miles per hour, the player tracker. So they were like, all right, he runs fast when he needs to run fast. And obviously that worked out pretty well for them. Yeah. So there are different ways you can look at it. And then the other thing is the 10-yard split when you get to like linemen or linebackers that show explosiveness. But it just, when you look at the 40-yard dash, I think it's important to understand what you are watching. It doesn't have the on the surface, it doesn't have a lot of true football relevance. There is value there. The 10-yard split is relevant. Just guys running well tells you they prepared. It shows how focused a guy is. It shows how well he's prepared, how well he can handle a big moment. But you can't just look at a 4.240 and say this guy's good or this guy's bad based off that.
As you were saying, as you were talking about this, and you talked about Tyquan and then people being surprised at that. Do you think, I just thought about this, do you think these 40 times ruin offensive coordinators more than the players? Like, for example, you see, like, Tyquan Thornton, we didn't know he was that fast. In college, he seemed to me, I think he got a lot of red zone touchdowns and stuff like that. He didn't play like a speedy receiver. And I'm wondering if his offensive coordinator didn't say, I don't care about your speed. I'm going to use you this way or that way. But when these guys get to the professional level and they've ran these 40s, offensive coordinators, they're humans, and they're almost like when we're playing Madden or NCAA, we see a guy with 99 speed, we instantly think go routes.
Right.
Do you think coordinators get caught up in, let's try and get explosive plays for this guy because he has a high 40, he's a speed guy, instead of saying, I don't care what his 40 is, let's run our offense, let's run these plays for this guy, and if he breaks one and gets in the open, then so be it. Do you think coordinators, GMs, teams, fans, everyone gets caught up in the idea of what these guys run 40 times in and change how they run their offense or how they call plays simply based off of what this kid ran in the 43 years ago?
Fans definitely get carried away. I mean, that one I can answer easily. When it comes to coordinators and GMs, and I would just say teams as a whole, right? Because the coordinator's not drafting the player, the GM's not designing the offense. You put the thing, together. But you want to have a plan, right? The GM and the coordinator will talk when you draft the guy. If good coordinators shouldn't, right? Because you shouldn't be drafting the guy off of his 40.
Yeah.
You should be drafting what you see on film. And if the 40 time, faster or slower, doesn't match up with what you see on film, you go back and you look. Again, Puka Nacua didn't run a good 40. The Rams went back and they looked and they were like, well, he plays faster than he timed, so we're good with that. Or like the Chiefs looking at it and saying, yes, he ran a good 40 with Xavier Worthy, but he has agility and quickness. And there's a difference between being fast and being quick. Fast is straight line speed. Quickness is like how your ability to change direction and your ability to remain fast when changing direction and move in a phone booth and things like that. So I'm sure, like, the Elliott Wolf quote, right? You want fast guys, draft fast guys. Like, it happens. But I think a good team will look at it and say, this is the player he's on film. This is who we want him to be. You're not going to get a guy that is like legit slow that runs a 4.3, right? Tyquan was one of the faster receivers in that draft. It was just that he wasn't, people didn't think he was the fastest. Right? So you're not going to get a guy who's plodding along and suddenly runs a 4.3, you're going to go look at the tape and be like, no, this guy's been plotting. Like, that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think you can get caught up with it. I think GMs probably get caught up with it more than coaches. But take a guy like Ted McMillan, right? Ted McMillan, he's not slow. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
But he's not somebody I would say is fast.
Yeah.
He's functional speed. If he comes out and runs a 4.4,
he's top 5.
He will be, but I'm not suddenly trying to turn him into a burner. I'm going to let him play how he played in college, and you just kind of know, all right, he's a little faster than I thought he was. I'm not going to completely change the way I view him as a player because of that. Let's go to a call real quick before we hit the headlines. Matt in Rhode Island. Matt, good morning.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey.
I got to work on Sunday morning, so I love listening to the show.
Appreciate it.
Let me try to explain what I mean by this. But last year's draft, besides the quarterback, obviously they're going to have their chance to play this year. But I'm just confused on Elliott Wolf as being out there as a guy, and how Grable's going to trust him if these guys, especially the wide receivers, come to camp and they're not really he blamed it on the development of the player, but was it just the development or was it just the draft process? All right, thanks.
Thanks for the call, Matt. A little bit of both. The subject line said, why should fans trust Elliott Wolf? I would say, I don't know, maybe this is talking around it, but he's in a different role than he was last year. He's not, it sounds like Mike Vrabel has final say. Ryan Cowden's in there. I think he's more sort of de facto, he's more of a resource than a decision maker at this point. I think they'll hear him out, what he thinks of the players, but I don't know that he's somebody who's going to be able to put his fist to the table and be like, this is the guy we're drafting, right?
Yeah.
That's Mike Vrabel, and I think Ryan Cowden is the first guy he'll go to, just that familiarity. So, I think
that the team is in a different situation as well.
Right. So just because, again, Wolf's the one who's talking at the combine, I'm not reading into that he's still the lead decision maker, because I don't think he is. I think he still has a say. I think he's still a voice in the room. And you can be nervous about that, certainly, based on the way the offseason went last year. But I don't think he has the same kind of control. I don't think he's close to the same kind of, and this is me guessing. I don't think he has close to the same kind of control that he had last offseason. All right, we got to hit the headlines. We'll come back. We broke down Will Campbell. He has it, and if you missed that, you can check it out. Sports Hub YouTube channel or Sunday Kickoff, Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff, wherever you get your podcasts. The other guy, maybe he's less realistic for the Patriots, but is a fascinating study in this draft. And he, believe it or not, terrific blue chip prospect, has one of the biggest what ifs or one of the biggest questions facing any player in this draft, and that is Travis Hunter. What is the big Travis Hunter question? Will we get it answered this week? How does it apply to the Patriots? We'll answer that in 90 seconds. No commercials, just the headlines here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
From the Town Fair Time Studios, this is your home for every Patriots game.
Into the end zone, trying to keep the play alive. Falling down, he goes to the end zone. It's caught. He's got it. Touchdown.
WBZFM at HD Boston. 98.5, the Sports Hub. A Beasley Media Group station. Sports Hub headlines. Presented by Celsius Energy Drinks.
The Bruins returned from the Four Nations break last night. They were at home at TD Garden where they lost 3-2 to the Anaheim Ducks in overtime. The Bees get back at it on Tuesday against Toronto. The Celtics, they've been back from the All-Star break. They won on Thursday to kick off their second half, and then they play again today, hosting the New York Knicks. Coverage of that game can be heard right here on 98.5 The Sports Hub, starting at 12:30. In college hoops yesterday, couple top 10 matchups. Number 5 Houston beat number 8 Iowa State. Number 6 Tennessee beat number 7 Texas. And unranked BYU upset number 19 Arizona. That game was played in Tucson. And the Red Sox won their Grapefruit League opener 6-4 over the Tampa Bay Rays yesterday. They'll take on the Toronto Blue Jays today at 1 o'clock. Garrett Crochet scheduled to get the start in that one. Sports Hub headlines are brought to you by Awaken 180 with a 98% customer satisfaction rating and thousands of 5-star reviews. The choice is clear. Awaken180weightloss.com. I'm Alex Barth on Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Your next update is at 10 o'clock.
This is Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown turns the corner. Finger roll is up and good. Scoring the foul.
Listen to home of the Boston Celtics, 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Alex Barth and Cerrone Battle are here, talking football every Sunday morning with the insiders and with you. It's Sunday Kickoff on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
How would you rank Travis if he specialized in one position?
I'd have him at, well, it depends on what position, right? If you specialize him as a corner, he's the number 1 overall prospect. I mean, here's the thing about Travis Hunter. You heard Jordan Reed say that he's a rare talent. I'd argue a generational talent. So regardless of where he's at, he's the best player in this year's draft. Now, I believe he should be primarily a cornerback, but also he should have packages at wide receiver. And the reason why is this. Think about the teams that have the top couple overall picks. Tennessee, they need help at wide receiver as well. So do the Cleveland Browns. So when you get a player of the caliber of Travis Hunter, who not only played wide receiver, but won the Biletnikoff Award, meaning he was the best wide receiver in college football, but he's a generational talent defensive back, a game-changing DB. For me, it's easy to have Travis Hunter as a number 1 player.
Yeah, maximize the talent that young man has.
Show on ESPN on Travis Hunter. Back here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. Alex Barth, Cerrone Battle. I agree with some what Acho said. I think Hunter's a better corner. I don't think he's a bad wide receiver. I think he probably would be the best receiver in this draft if we were to just list him there outright. I think he'd be the best corner too. I think he's better as a corner. There's the conversation of, where would he make the most money? Well, what's going to pay more, 2 wide receiver contracts or 3 corner contracts? Because I think he's going to be in the league longer as a corner. It's just less physical. And the reporting is that the league kind of supports that. The early reporting going into this week is most, not all, but most teams view him primarily as a corner. Some view him primarily as a wide receiver. That might come down to need. The way I've posed it is if you could add an A-plus corner or an A-minus receiver to your roster, which would you choose? And if you're the Patriots, you're certainly choosing wide receiver. Mm-hmm. because of where they're at, and they have Christian Gonzalez, they have no wide receivers and all that. But so what's been left out of that whole conversation, we know how the league views Travis Hunter. How does Travis Hunter view Travis Hunter?
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't talked a ton about this from a pro prospect point of view. He talked about playing two ways in college quite a bit. There is one soundbite from when he was on College Game Day back in November, where he was kind of asked, what are you more comfortable doing? He said, I'm more comfortable playing two ways. What would you rather do with the NFL? I'll do whatever the team asks me to do. So nothing definitive. And we'll probably get more of that from him this week at the podium. What's going to be more telling is how his meetings go behind the scenes, the reports on that, whatever we get, because that's going to be the conversation he's going to have this week with teams.
Yeah.
Where do you want to play? This is how we want to use you. Are you okay with that? How much flexibility is there, right? If he goes into these team meetings and says, I'm playing both ways, don't draft me unless you plan to let me play both ways full time, it becomes a very different conversation versus if he goes in and says, I want to play corner and moonlight as a wide receiver, I want to focus on wide receiver, play a little corner, right? We don't know. Like, how flexible is he going to be? What does he want to do? That is a big variable here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a team considering drafting him, and it's only a handful of teams that realistically have a shot at him, but if you're a team considering drafting him and you go to the meeting and you say, Travis, our plan for you is for you to play corner, and he says, nope, I want to play wide receiver. Like, now what do you do? Do you still consider drafting him? Do you move on and be like, well, we don't, you can't draft him, bring him to camp and then just hope he changes his mind. I've said this, like, I think the last thing you can do is as talented as he is, there's still player development, especially if you're going to draft him as a receiver. Mm-hmm. You can't just draft him and say, all right, we have Travis Hunter, and I'll figure it out as we go. You need a plan. Yeah. Like any other prospect, you need a plan for how you're going to develop him. So this is a big week because he's a tremendous player, but there is this unique sort of, it's not really a what if, but it's a question. Where is he going to play? What's his development plan going to look like? That's going to be important. And how flexible is he given his ability on both sides of the ball?
As long as this is going on, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter since I started watching him, and just the way he moves, and he's almost like an alien. Like some of the things he does, the way he can twist his body and get in position, his hands. He's not a big guy. He's not super tall, but he plays like he's tall. Long legs, long arms. He's just like it's like God touched him. So you're a football player. That's it. You're just an elite football player. And I think he is one of those generational talents. And if I'm a team that has a ton of holes and a ton of issues and really nothing really going for him right now, outside of a new coach hire, Patriots.
Yeah.
I honestly would consider bringing in a guy like that because I think he's the most talented player in the draft and one of the most talented players we've seen in a long time. And if he's a corner, fine. If I have a chance at getting Charles Woodson and Champ Bailey over, tackles, I think I might do it. I think he's that good. And I think the kid at playing two positions, he ended up with like 90 catches and he led the nation in yards and touchdowns, something like that as a receiver, and was and probably the best cornerback in the country at the same time. I understand you have to make a decision on where he's going to play and how you're going to play him. But I think my first step is I'm going to get this generational talent in my building.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to have that conversation on where he's going to play. And we both agree on it. Then we're going to play him. Okay, I got a generational receiver not generational receiver. I don't know if he's going to be that, but as a DB, yeah, I think he can be a generational DB, but I'm getting this guy in my building. And he's going to be one of the faces, if not the faces of a franchise. And I think he's going to be a guy that one day will wear a coat jacket. I just don't know how he's going to go in. But I think he's one of those guys where, you know what, like I mentioned about Will Campbell, I'm not going to be the one that said no to Travis Hunter because I couldn't decide as a coach or whatever how I'm going to use or how I'm going to play this kid. But I think he's one of those guys. You just go ahead and get him in the building and you deal with what comes out. Because 9 times out of 10, wherever he goes, whatever coach makes a decision, he's going to be there longer than the coaches are. So, I mean, it's
well, let me ask you this.
I'm getting him in here.
let me ask you this, and I've heard this question, and I honestly go back and forth with it. I'm not sure how I feel because they need an influx of talent, but I also think you do need to have a long-term plan.
Yeah.
You draft Travis Hunter as a corner, and he's probably going to be a really good corner, and you have him and Gonzalez, and that duo is awesome for a long time, ideally, right? Top corners making 25 million. I think the biggest cornerback contract right now is 22, 23 million. I have to double check that. But you figure by the time you pay those two guys, it's pushing 30. And look, the cap is going to go up with it. So it's all relative. The biggest AAV, Jalen Ramsey and Patrick Surtain both get 24 a year. Yeah. And then you have Jair Alexander making 21, AJ Terrell and Denzel Ward making 20. So you figure it's pushing, if not at 30, by the time you have to pay Gonzalez and then Hunter. That means you're either going to have $60 million worth of corners on your roster, or you're drafting somebody in the first round that you're not planning on bringing back on a second contract. And $60 million at corner, plus whatever you're going to have on Drake May's deal, that's a lot. That's a lot kind of consolidate. Now,
you'd be doing the same on receivers, though. You would trying to pay, you're trying to get a T. Higgins or trying to draft a guy, you're going to be looking at paying $35 million for receivers.
Well,
and I think corners have more impact, to be honest.
The difference there, I would say, is, and again, part of me says, yeah, it's consolidating assets too much. But another part of me says they just need good players. Like, it would be great if we had to argue over which good players they should keep, right? It would be great if we got to that point somehow, some way. But with the receiver, it's a little different. One, if you sign T. Higgins, I don't think you're drafting a wide receiver at the top of the draft. You might take a guy on day 2, but like, we're not talking about...
you're not going to have 2 Pro Bowl receivers.
Well, you might, but like, we're not. You're going to try to get a guy later on and develop him. The other thing is T. Higgins is 27. You're not so much worried. You can sign a free agent for one contract. He's 26. You can sign a free agent for one contract and move on from him. Like, maybe you sign T. Higgins to a 4-year deal, and it's like Matthew Judon. He plays 3 of it. You move him at the end when he turns 30.
Yep.
You draft a guy. You're more in the. That's more of a long-term play. You're drafting a guy high to be here for 10-something years. A free agent, that might just be transactional. We're going to bring you in 3-4 years, and then we're going to move on. So I think it's a little apples and oranges there.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it as pure talent, skill. I understand that the numbers are going to be funny. When you get a lot of great talent, you're going to have to make this decision. It's Cincinnati all over again. It's like, I got to pay somebody.
It would be great if we got to the point where this was like a real discussion. It's just it's an interesting thing I've heard.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how I feel. There's a strong argument both sides.
Yeah.
And really the answer is, okay, well, what does the rest of the roster look like? Which obviously we're not going to know because it's a multi-year process here getting this thing built back up. So if they draft Travis Hunter as a corner, that is going to be the interesting question is, what is the long-term outlook for him and Gonzalez? Are they both here in New England long-term, or now is, we go 2 more years, does one become like a trade piece? Right, or something like that. So that would be, again, let's get there. It'd be great if we can get there. But let's get there. Speaking of T. Higgins and free agency, we've done the draft here for the first 80 minutes of the show. I do want to get into some news we got this week on T. Higgins. Just kind of where things are at, because free agency is going to come up quick, too, after the Combine. Kind of reset there, plus your calls. You want to call in. You want to talk Combine, you want to talk draft, free agency, whatever. 617-779-0985. All of that next on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff is on the way on the Sports Hub.
We will see if they actually get it done. They also have to pay Jamar Chase. They have Trey Hendricks on an expiring deal as well. Joe Burrow has already been paid, but they have that significant contract on the books. But it's looking like Higgins might not be as realistic of an option for the Patriots as maybe some thought. Mm-hmm. So now the question is, how do they pivot? Where do they go? Cooper Kupp's name's been out there. Deebo Samuel. I don't really love either of those options. I think those guys are past the point of being able to carry an offense. If they're like your second edition, great, especially Kupp. But I don't know that either one of those guys is going to, reset things offensively for the Patriots. I hope, and this is a week where you really start to hear about this kind of stuff, I hope they go to the trade market. Mm-hmm. I would rather see them go to the trade market than once again force themselves to take a wide receiver higher than that wide receiver should probably go. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a case to be made for Ted McMillan at 4 or trade down and take Ted McMillan, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they have to get an answer at left tackle. They have to get an answer at pass rush and free agency to do that. But short of that, some of these guys we talk about on day 2, Trey Harris, Jay Noel, Jaden Higgins, the guys from Iowa State, Xavier Restrepo, I think can be good NFL players. But they're good complementary receivers. They're like the guys the Patriots have now. Pop Douglas, Kendrick Bourne. Puka Nacua is a 5th-round pick, so who knows, right? But given their history developing wide receivers, they have a first-time wide receivers coach in Todd Downing. I just think if they want that guy, they're gonna have to go to the trade market. And if it's draft Trey Harris at 38 or trade the 38th pick for DK Metcalf, that should be a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's I agree with you. I think you need to start with with the trade market. I mean, if you can't get T. Higgins, then I'm not going crazy for the Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupps, Riley Coopers. I think those guys, the difference between being a great elite Pro Bowl level all-pro wide receiver and being a guy that's just okay, sometimes is a half a step. It's a step here. It's a step here in direction. It's, he almost got it. He made that spectacular catch. And I think those guys have lost that step. They've lost that advantage, that difference that separates them from everybody else. If Riley Cooper was peak Riley Cooper, I think Buffalo might have been in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just that little differences here or there. But to me, if you can't get that young guy in free agency like a T. Higgins, then you have to work the trade market. You have to get, like I said, a DK Metcalf or something like that. And if that dries up, then nobody can do the work for you. Now you have to, unfortunately, you have to be the one to go find Puka Nacua. You have to find T. Higgins. You know what I'm saying? You have to find Cooper Kupp, a younger version. You have to do the homework, find that guy, develop that guy, have that guy ready to go immediately. And it's going to come down to the coaching staff and GM, whoever, picking that guy, getting that guy up to speed. Not only that particular player, you're going to have to figure out a way to develop the guys you already have as well. I think you're going to have to do that anyway. So I think you're just trying to find a way now for somebody to do the work for you. And I think T. Higgins is top shelf. You can get DK Metcalf is top shelf. And I referenced this earlier. Going after the Riley Coopers and guys like that, now you're on Facebook Marketplace just reaching. You're just
Cooper.
Yeah, Mark Cooper, excuse me.
Riley Cooper's got to be at least...
Yeah, he's 100 years old now, but...
37.
Excuse me, Amari Cooper. You're just reaching now for guys and names, and let's kick the tires on this guy. And I think for this team, you have to figure out a way to get a younger guy, a playmaker. And if you can't do it through the trade market and T. Higgins is off the board, I think you have to really consider taking, a guy at 4 or in his early second round or something like that. If you can't get something else, and you have to develop these guys. It's also on you. It's on the coaching staff. It's on Vrabel. It's on these receivers coach, on the court. It's on McDaniels to develop a guy and turn a guy that we thought was just going to be an okay guy and get your lad McConkey out of this draft. You have to make that guy that type of player. And I wouldn't say the pressure, but this is what you bring coaches in for. This is why you pay coaches the big money. You have to figure out a way to develop and coach these guys up And I think this is something the past regime couldn't do. We've all seen it. But hopefully now we're going to see if these guys can do it, and they're going to really have to earn their money. I think they're going to have to do that either way, but it looks like everything else is drying up and you have no other option but to go out there, get your guy in the draft and develop him and turn him into the guy that everybody else wants. That's a position you're going to have to be in.
Yeah, I mean, look, Chris, I see people in the YouTube chat talking about Chris Godwin. Like, he helps you out a little bit if they can land him, but it sounds like he may go back to Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
That was another bit of news we got, that his contract was set to void at some point last week, and they pushed that deadline back to right before free agency, which is usually a sign that there's a new deal on the way and they're buying time.
Yeah.
You mentioned, not at 4 at the top of the second round, finding a guy. I actually think if they're going to draft a receiver, the spot to do it would be trading back up into the end of the first.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still take your tackle, you can still take your pass rusher at 4, and now you're looking at, there's 3 guys, and I don't think all 3 are going to fall into the 20. So you have Hunter's Hunter. He is whatever he is. He's not going to be on the board. McMillan is a potential at 4. He's the only one in that top tier of receivers, with Hunter being his own thing.
Yeah.
Or McMillan and Hunter, if you want to put them together, fine. The next group is Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State,
mm-hmm.
Matthew Golden from Texas, and Luther Burden from Missouri.
Yep.
And they're all stylistically different, especially Egbuka. Golden and Burden, there's some overlap. And they're all probably going to go, they could go anywhere from some people have some of those guys going 10 to 15. Some people have some of them falling out of the first round. I don't think they're all going to go in the top 20, but I don't think they're all going to fall into the 20s. It's just a matter of who's going to go where, because, again, they're all very stylistically different, but I think grade out ultimately similarly, so it's what our team's looking for. They're all Patriots fits. It would be for different roles, but they're all hypothetically Patriots fits.
Mm-hmm.
If Luther Burden is there, 23, 24, 25. Matthew Golden, Emeka Egbuka, 23, 24, 25. That would be a spot, especially if you get that tackle and pass rush at the top of the draft, a spot where it would make a lot of sense to move up. I think those guys, the gap from them to the next group, which is, again, the people, the guy a lot of people talk about in that next group is Trey Harris from Ole Miss, A.O. Manor from Stanford, Jalen Royals, Jaden Higgins, Jack Beck. I think the drop-off from Burden, Egbuka, Golden to that next group is significant. So if they are going to draft a wide receiver to try to be that guy, to me, their best bet is going up into the 20s, and ideally you target a guy, but it may be as simple as whoever falls from Egbuka, Burden, and Golden. And by the way, they're 20, 21, 25 right now on the consensus mock. Grabbing one of those guys to me would make the most sense.
Do you think there's more depth at other positions of need? You think if I take McMillan 4th, do you think you can get an edge rusher early second round now can be an impact player?
So I think
you see what I'm saying? Can you flip it and get quality trenches players later, more so that you can get a receiver later in this draft?
The defensive front, yes. I think you can get they're not all Abdul Carter, but you can get a good pass rusher anywhere in top 150, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's how good this draft is up front defensively. Tackle, no. The tackle drop-off is significant. From Campbell to Banks, I don't think Josh Simmons is an option for them. He's talented, but he's coming off that kneecap injury. This is a team that needs their first-round picks to play.
Yeah.
They can't afford a first-round pick that's redshirting. Armand Membu, again, good player, but he is a right tackle. So, if you want to draft Campbell and Membu, and those are your 2 tackles, sure, but he's not solving your issue on the left side. And then you get into Josh Connerly, Ariante Ursary, and then down to Anthony Belton. It's a lot thinner there. So it would depend on which position you're targeting at the top in that regard, because there are other positions that the Patriots need beyond wide receiver. We've talked a lot about those for the draft. I want to get into some of the other free agents. Again, free agency a couple weeks away. We've kind of hammered this wide receiver thing with T. Higgins not being available. What other positions can the Patriots make a splash at in free agency? We'll do that next on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff coming up on the Sports Hub.
Tune in tonight for the keys to the game.
since Devin McCourty retired.
Yep.
Now, look, and some people may be like, oh, they're missing a safety as a whole. Last year was a weird year for them in the safety position. You had Jabril Peppers dealing with his legal issues, which at this point, there might still be a civil case going on. I don't remember exactly how that ended up, but like the legal trial's over, and the fact that the league removed him from the exempt list and there was nothing more there, like he should be able to get back to focusing on football. Kyle Duggar was dealing with an ankle injury all year. You hope he bounces back from that. But even before those issues, when those guys are struggling, going back to last year, the decision to kind of rotate them and play those guys out of position on the back end limited the Patriots. You took whoever it was playing deep, Duggar or Peppers, one of your defensive players, you put him out of best defensive players, you put him out of position. And you had a guy at free safety who wasn't really a free safety. Javon Holland can go play on the back end of your defense and take care of that and do it at a high level. And now you're freed up to play Duggar and Peppers in the box, let them roam, let them play a more aggressive style of football. Where they are better, you hope you get a turnaround from at least one of them, and you go from there. This is a smaller, quicker, more attacking defense. Those guys will thrive in that kind of hybrid linebacker role.
Mm-hmm.
But you need somebody playing on the back end. Again, Javon Holland does it. He does it at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not the biggest need, and some might argue safety isn't even technically a premium position, and he couldn't be their only free agency signing. They have to do more.
Yeah.
But Javon Holland, to me, is he's only 25, is one of the better signings the Patriots could make in free agency.
Yeah, you stole my thunder there. As soon as you said division rival, I knew exactly who you were going to say.
I don't even know who the Jets and Bills' biggest free agents are. I mean, they're not stealing
I think
Rodgers. I guess
Ward,
DJ Reed from the Jets, who would not be a bad signing for the Patriots. Also, I'd like to see them get a little more size at the cornerback position. Reed's a little smaller. I'd look more for a guy like Carlton Davis, or there's another corner who I was just reading about who I can't remember. But I guess
Hassan Reddick is the other one from the Jets. That I knew there was someone else that was.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, he was a Jet, but kind of wasn't. But
right,
Holland, I completely agree with you there. I think I look at that as a big need for the Patriots. I think having somebody back there changes how your whole secondary plays. I think having a true center fielder back there making plays, or the threat of somebody that can make a play, changes how you approach your whole defense. And I think this team does have holes all over the place. And I think we've kind of, as time goes on, I would say I think in general, overall, I think a lot of people have zeroed in and said the only reason this team isn't good is because we don't have a left tackle, we don't have a wide receiver. It's like those are sexy positions, but this team needs linebackers. They need free safeties. I think they need running back help. I think they need help all over the place. But I think a real free safety, is a major need. It's important. You saw how important it was when this team was winning championships. And I think it's something you got to get back to. And you mentioned he's young. You put him back there. Okay, let's say you do take, what's the kid? Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter and Gonzalez, and you have that kid in the back end. Throwing the football against this team will be very difficult.
That's a hell of a secondary with Duggar and Peppers in the box, Marcus Jones in the slot. That's tough. That's quite the secondary.
Yeah, and you're dealing with now when you're playing against Josh Allen, you're playing against Tua and those receivers, it's a little easier now to defend those guys on the back end. You're a little better on third down, third and long. You're going to still have to go through Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, if he keeps his T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. You're going to need a strong secondary in order to win key games against key opponents in this league. And if everybody's loading up on receivers and quarterbacks and offensive players, you better have a good secondary. And I think getting a guy like Holland, I think would be a great pickup for this team in the secondary. And I think he'd be a sneaky good major addition for this team if they can get a guy like that.
Where are you? All right, so that's one of the top free agents that's available that's not at like a premium position and need for the Patriots. Most of the top free agents are. I'm going through PFF's list here, and they do a great job with this, ranking the free agents. They have, their top 10, wide receiver, pass rusher, corner, wide receiver, tackle, pass rusher. Like half of them are positions that we do identify as premium needs for the Patriots. One guy that's not So Holland's one. What about Trey Smith? And this one I go back and forth on. The guard from the Chiefs has been a good guard. Actually, is actually kind of coming off more of a down year. He's been better. He's still regarded as one of the top free agents, but took 11 penalties this past year. It's another one where, like, if Trey Smith is your second best free agent signing, that's great. If you're maxing out your offseason on a guard, as good as Trey Smith is, I don't feel great about it. He's also a right guard, so he's going to have to change positions when he comes here, because I think we all learned that Mike Onwenu is not a tackle. Right? You're not moving him back out there.
Yeah.
So some people really like the idea of Trey Smith, and it's like, all right, if you have Trey Smith, David Andrews, Mike Onwenu, you've solidified the middle. You're going to have a good guard next to whoever your new left tackle is. But if they're going to go like out of position, right, or away from their premium position, I would rather Javon Holland than Trey Smith, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with you on that one. I think at this point you can, but you can probably get Trey Smith on the cheap now after that Super Bowl. But I think anybody off that Kansas City offensive line is financially, I don't think that was a good moment for them. But I agree. I think the safety is a bigger need there. But if it's between the two, I'm taking Holland. But I wouldn't be opposed to Trey Smith if he's available, if he's there, and they can get him without completely breaking the bank. Like you said, if he's your number 2 signing or 3, whatever, if he's, depends on how much he's going to get, I wouldn't be opposed to having him on the team. You're going to need offensive line help. And I think if you don't get offensive line help, I think the fans are going to lose it. You've addressed all these other needs, and it's like, yeah, but the offensive line, you're going to hear about it all summer. So I think you would do that just to say, okay, we've done something. We tried to stabilize this thing here. We've got somebody who's already ready-made that we don't have to develop. And I think everybody would be cool with that, but I would take Holland over Smith if it came down to those two.
Let's go to Chuck in the car on the Patriots safety position. Chuck, how you doing?
Hey, great to hear you guys. You guys do a great job on the weekend. I just wanted to, I think Travis Hunter, like everyone's saying, his intelligence is way high, playing both sides of the ball. Is that someone that you could see as like a Devin McCurdy? Because I think you guys are right on the money with we need a free safety. Duggar doesn't quite cut it. He wasn't brought in to be a free safety. And Travis Hunter could be like that Devin McCourty, maybe play a year at cornerback, that intelligence, put him back, play center field. And it could save him a little bit if he's not playing up at the line all the time, if he's not running one-on-one with the receiver, where you could mix him in the return game and as a wide receiver at times. I don't think he's necessarily the answer, but you guys just sparked me with that free safety comment that if you think about it, he seems like kind of that Devin McCourty type of player that you could put back there at some point.
Thanks for the call, Chuck. Would Travis Hunter be good as a free safety? I think so.
Yeah,
that's going to be a tough sell if you're the Patriots.
Yeah.
It's not a premium position. It's not a position he's played before. It's a position that makes less money. They can get
years down the line, maybe, yeah.
Right, maybe later. A lot of good corners kind of late in their career will extend their career by moving to safety for some of the reasons Chuck mentioned.
Yeah, Charles Woodson, I think, didn't he make the Pro Bowl as a free safety?
Sounds right. But he's too good as a corner to move off of corner if you're going to play him on defense. Corner, it's a premium position for a reason, and it's going to be a tough sell on him. Like they do need a free safety. They should be able to get somebody who can handle it without having to draft Travis Hunter and move him. So maybe there's some snaps where he kind of takes on that role, some rotated coverages. Like they can certainly get creative with that, but I wouldn't draft Travis Hunter as a safety. I just think that's shortchanging him.
No, I wouldn't do that to him at all. Now, later in his career, he's been banged up a little bit, whatever. You put him back there and just be the eyes and your center fielder. I think he'd be great at it, but I would not do that to him early in his career. I wouldn't even ask him to do that. I think you have to now do the work and get a guy that you can put back there. And I think Holland would be a good answer to that. If not, you got to find somebody in the draft. I think either way, I think you have to find a good free safety in this draft. I know you referenced a kid who's not going to be available this year, but next year's draft is going to be some free safeties available that can really change teams. Yes.
Yeah, top of my 2026 board right now.
Let's go ahead and circle it. Your mock draft for 2026.
No, I'll give you for this year, though, who I really like is Andrew Makuba from Texas, who's a projected day 2 pick.
Yeah.
Rangy, instinctive, maybe not quite as explosive as a guy like Travis Hunter, but he can play the position. Like, he has the athleticism to play the position. He did a great job on the back end for Texas. Now, they had good corners who made his life easier, but playing with Christian Gonzalez, and we'll see if they add, like, Carlton Davis, Paulson Debo on the other side. Those are solid NFL corners. He's going to be able to at least ease into it here. So, yeah, if it's not Javon Holland, Andrew Makuba would be a guy I'd look at in the draft for the Patriots that would make a lot of sense. I didn't have him in mock draft 1.0. There was like a draft. Yes, I do drafts of the drafts. There was a version 1 point that did. I would say we're going to do 2.0 after free agency. So you're going to have to wait a couple more weeks on that. But I would not be surprised if Andrew Makuba, assuming all things check out at the Combine, shows up in Patriots mock draft 2.0 on 98.5thesportshub.com. We will take a quick break here, wrap it up next here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
Stay tuned for more Sunday Kickoff on the Sports Hub.
This is Sean Grande, voice of the Celtics. Tune in today at 12:30 for Star Market Celtics Today and check out the Star Market.
Metcalf doesn't want to come here. And I kind of come to the conclusion that maybe we shouldn't try to reach for a wide receiver in the draft or overpay one in free agency. Let's focus on the front line, offensive, defensive line, pass rushers, maybe get a second cornerback. Do you know what I mean? If it's not there and players don't want to come here, don't overpay. Just strengthen those other areas, and maybe next year would be the right year to go after that. Wondering what you guys think, and if we can possibly make a run at the playoffs with that kind of approach. That's all for today, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Tony. Thanks for listening, and congrats on the win on Thursday night. I think, it's a really good point. And I meant to bring this up on the show today. I mentioned it on the Sports and Patriots podcast on Monday. They should add somebody at wide receiver, right? Mm-hmm. You can get like Chris Godwin on like a shorter term deal. Great. You want to try to draft somebody in like the 3rd round, 4th round who's a project. Great. But given the layout, given the terrain of the everybody that's available right now, there's absolutely a case to be made where you go into this and you say, look, we tried hard with Calvin Ridley, tried hard with Brandon Ayuk, we were ready to try hard with T. Higgins, but the guy we want, the guy to fill that role isn't there. We're going to hammer the trenches. Mm-hmm. We're going to load up everywhere else. We're not going to spend a ton at receiver. So now next year, we can go all in. And it projects to be a better year for receiver, whether it's in the draft, whether it's in free agency. We can go all in on getting that receiver we need. There's absolutely a case to be made for that to be the approach. Mm-hmm. It's going to frustrate some people, might frustrate the quarterback, but it was always going to take more than 1 year to build this thing up. And if wide receiver is the one you push to next year, I'd rather push wide receiver next year to tackle. I'd rather, this time next year we talking about, all right, they got Drake May some time. Now we need somebody to throw to rather than, man, it sucks Drake May was hurt all year.
Yeah, and I look at Buffalo, Kansas City, teams that kind of took steps back in wide receiver, but they were still there near the end. So I think if everything else is great and solid, you can still win football games and be a dominant team without having elite wide receivers on the outside. We should know that more than any other fan base in the NFL.
Yes, well, it helps when you have the quarterback.
That's true.
We will be back next week. So I will be in Indy coverage. So I don't know how much I'll have tomorrow. I think tomorrow's mostly a travel day. I'm getting in late. But definitely starting Tuesday, 98.5thesportshub.com, Sports Hub YouTube page, Sports Hub Patriots audio feed. We're going to do podcasts. We're going to do videos. We're going to do written content. We are going to have you completely covered from Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. And then Cerrone and I will be back next Sunday to break almost all of it down. Hopefully all of it. But we'll be back next Sunday. If you missed any of this show, Sports Hub YouTube page or wherever you get your podcast, Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. Nick Cattle's coming up next, taking you up to Celtics at 12:30 on the Sports Hub. I'll talk to you all from Indy this week. Have a fun one, everybody.
From the Town Fair Tire Studios, this is Boston's home for sports.
He scores! What a blast by Boston! Waiting, Holiday, three. Good night!
WBCFM and HD Boston 98.5, the Sports Hub. Beasley Media Group Station. Essential Sports Hub headline presented by Celsius Energy Drinks.
The Bruins returned from the Four Nations break last night. They were at home at TD Garden where they lost 3-2 to the Anaheim Ducks in overtime. The Bees get back at it on